Today, Delta calling on other airlines to share their list of banned passengers. Delta already has over 1,000 names. Now it wants to see others. And tipping on Twitter. You can now send content creators tips with Bitcoin. We hear from one of the biggest sellers on Amazon. And long lines at some UK gas stations, with some closing entirely. A nationwide truck driver shortage is disrupting supply. We have that and much more coming up at NTD Business. Good evening. Great to have you with us. I'm Paul Graney. Sales of new single-family homes increased for a second straight month in August, but there's a catch. 80% of them aren't finished yet. The labor shortage and raw material shortage is holding back home builders. New home sales were up 1.5% last month, but that's 24% lower than last year. Loose central bank monetary policy and low inventory pushed sales to a 15-year peak in January of this year. So joining us to discuss the latest data is Ken McElroy. McElroy leads MC Companies and manages over $1 billion in real estate assets. Ken, pleasure to have you on the show as always.
Hey, good to see you again. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, anytime. Ken, the Commerce Department are reporting that last month there were more new houses on the market than any time in the last 13 years. But here we've been hearing about bidding wars and housing shortages. Has anything changed in the meantime?
Oh, there's a lot. Obviously, people got sent home, and the pandemic and the COVID kind of what happens is a lot of people took their homes off the market. They, if they were selling them or they were thinking about selling them, they weren't because of all the uncertainty. So we had this pent up demand on the supply side, as you can imagine, and not to mention the fact that people just didn't want people going through their homes.
We know in the construction industry was really hit with the labor shortage as well. Are you seeing any easing, particularly since the enhanced unemployment benefits ended? Are there more people coming for work or?
Well, it's interesting. No, we're having a heck of a time finding folks. I think that one we got hit with the cost of goods. So the supply chains were so disrupted that things like lumber, were way up. As we've all read about that, and it's all kind of come back down. But on one project, just one that we're building, we were $1 million over just on a lumber package, and so we have that. And then, of course, now the labor, and so so what's happening is just like everyone, we're having to go out and pay more for the same labor that we would have had, let's say 2 years ago.
And on the supply side, we see lumber has come down, right? But most of the other costs that go into a house are still pretty expensive, Ken, right? Who are builders competing with for these commodities and materials, or is it builders themselves that are really bidding them up?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, the issue is that they're not getting them. So, there might be something that, let's say, some appliances that might have been a 3 or 4 week time frame, they might be 6 months, 8 months. So the issue is that the distribution process, a lot of the stuff that we used to get was from overseas, as you know, from all over the place, and so all that stuff's been disrupted at the moment, and so there's long timelines on a lot of these construction things.
Ken McElroy, MC Companies. And stocks ended mixed today, the market cooling off following a 2-day rally. The Dow rising about 33 points, 0.1%. S&P 500 rising 7 points, about 0.1% as well. The Nasdaq today, though, falling about 5 points. And in a big win for many Bitcoin fanatics, Twitter will now let users send it to one another. So if you like something you see on Twitter, you can tip the creator with Bitcoin. Twitter's working with a Bitcoin payments company called Strike. Twitter's CEO Jack Dorsey is an investor there. Now users in the US and El Salvador, which just made Bitcoin legal tender, can instantly send each other Bitcoin. Seems it'll cost them absolutely nothing. Jack Dorsey is a vocal supporter of Bitcoin and says more crypto-related services are coming. So joining us to discuss Twitter's Bitcoin tips is Andrew Chernland, the owner of Chernland Services, does over $50 million in eBay and Amazon sales annually. Andrew, pleasure to have you in the show again. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much.
So first we have El Salvador, a nation state. Now we have Twitter, one of the biggest social media companies in the world. Is this a sign of things to come for Bitcoin, and why should the regular person take notice?
Well, what's special about this, and any really network company, is that there's the network effect. So as the network gets bigger and more people are involved, more transactions take place, it actually doesn't dilute anything. It makes it significantly more valuable. In fact, some say that for networks, it's the number of nodes squared is how powerful they are. So if you think a classic example is a fax machine. If only one person has a fax machine, it's not useful. But if everyone has a fax machine, then it just becomes a normal basis. And so now not only are major, well, not even institutions, government entities like El Salvador getting on board, but existing networks that have 300 million active users like Twitter are adding on. And that just bolts on potentially 300 million users to the Bitcoin network, which makes it that much more of an inevitability.
There's a lot of debate about Bitcoin, right? We have mostly investors and analysts who are debating whether it's a good investment or not, whether it will succeed or not. But you're a very successful business person, whether it comes from a family manufacturing business, which was successful. You've done over $250 million in Amazon sales over the past few years. So valid business experience. What is it for you as an actual business person that excites you about crypto and Bitcoin in particular?
Well, I think the biggest thing that people need to take a moment to realize is Bitcoin is really two things. So there's Bitcoin, the coin. That is the store of value. That is the thing that trades currently for somewhere around $42,000, $44,000, something like that. And then there is the Bitcoin network. So that is all the people involved on the network. And so that in and of itself is really where the most exciting thing is. Do I think that the coin itself is going to become more valuable as the network becomes more ubiquitous? Yes. But the network part is the really, really cool part. And so that is a way for two parties to trustlessly trade with one another or exchange money with one another or any kind of financial transaction in a way that's instant, super low cost, and is out of the reach of, or it has no geographic or other constraints. And so what's really, really cool is that both things are happening at the same time. From a business owner or from an investor, it's very interesting to watch the price, and that will move as the network effect takes hold. But really, the whole driver of this is the network effect in itself. The price of the coin is just a byproduct of this becoming more and more useful and more widespread. So really, whether you're on either side, whether you're just interested on it as a human experiment, as an engineering a lesson, or if you're interested as an investor, either way, it's really the network of the effect and the number of users that really drives both things. And so that's why this news with Twitter is so significant, because all of a sudden the network effect might increase drastically and bring on a lot more people that aren't currently on the network.
Andrew Chernland, Chernland Services. But while Chernland says it's good, Beijing says it's bad. China's central bank today declaring all cryptocurrency activities illegal. Bitcoin seemed to plunge 9% on the news before recovering a little bit later. NTD's Vic Corder has the details.
China's central bank calls all cryptocurrency deals illegal. It says on its website that cryptocurrency trading breeds criminal activities such as gambling, illegal fundraising, fraud, pyramid schemes, and money laundering. It will severely crack down on illegal financial activities-related virtual currencies.
I don't think it will necessarily kill off cryptocurrency use within China. The cryptocurrency market for the Chinese will effectively move more towards the black market, quote unquote, and we'll see lots of that happening. There are VPNs out there that could just that could hide things.
Rob Chong is the founder of Griffin Digital Mining. He says people have already known that China is moving away from cryptocurrencies and pushing its own digital yuan.
And even then, I think without China, it doesn't matter. The global uptake for cryptocurrencies is something that's been let out of the barn, and you can't get them all back in anymore.
Senator Pat Toomey tweeted that the crackdown on crypto is a big opportunity for the U.S. Jahan Jamali, the co-founder at Sarson Funds, agrees.
We'll continue to see the infrastructure for cryptocurrency investing and cryptocurrency mining navigate out of places where there are increasing restrictions like China and more into places like Texas and Wyoming.
However, current SEC Chair Gary Gensler has an unfavorable view of crypto. He said Tuesday that he doesn't think there's long-term viability for 5,000 or 6,000 private forms of money, and that it's worthwhile to have an investor protection regime placed around this. Faye Quarter, NTD News.
And President Biden says he hopes a vaccine booster shot will be available to every American in the future. He spoke today after federal agencies approved a Pfizer booster for some, but not all citizens.
And this week, as planned, we took a key step in protecting the vaccinated with booster shots, which our top government doctors believe provides the highest level of protection available to date. Based on that review, the majority of Americans who were fully vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine are now able to receive the booster shot 6 months after they've received their second shot.
The CDC director today backed a booster shot from Pfizer for Americans aged 65 and older, as well as adults with underlying medical conditions or in high-risk jobs like teachers or healthcare workers. The director's decision is aligned with the FDA, but goes against the CDC panel's recommendation for a narrower rollout. The panel members expressed concern about rushing to let young, healthy people get a booster, with scientists divided over the need for booster shots in general, with some saying there is inadequate evidence that they're needed by anyone other than older people. And after thousands of passengers were flagged for not wearing a mask, Delta wants other airlines to share their no-fly lists of problematic passengers who've been banned. It says it's to protect airline employees. Delta says more than 1,600 people are on the airline's no-fly list, and they submitted more than 600 names this year alone. The airline says they've asked other airlines to share their lists as well, with the company saying a banned customer list doesn't work if the customer can just go fly with another airline. It also said it expanded support to help employees affected by problem passengers. The FAA says there were over 4,000 unruly passenger reports this year, with over 3,000 of those reports related to passengers refusing to wear masks. And while working an airplane isn't easy, neither is delivering food. New York City just passed a bill granting certain rights and privileges to delivery workers. NTD's Phil Zoe has more.
New York City is the first in the nation to pass a bill regulating the delivery industry. There are moments that I like to work, but always with caution. The bill is setting a minimum wage, which is $15 in New York City, for delivery workers at companies like Uber Eats, Grubhub, and DoorDash. There are problems, like your bike being stolen, problems with the companies. We're working with long-distance orders, sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 miles. Viviana Morales is a labor attorney in New York. She says delivery guys won big.
It's a historic win for app-based delivery workers in New York City specifically. However, this could certainly spark a movement across the country as the gig economy is really growing in so many different cities.
And at restaurants where workers are picking up deliveries, they can now use the bathrooms.
A lot of workers complain about is restroom access. They do lots and lots of trips and they're not allowed to use the bathrooms in the restaurants for which they deliver food from. So that was a big push.
Apps now have to credit the tips to the workers, inform them of the amount, and if the tip was removed, share the reason why.
So part of the bill was to actually show the consumer when you tip somebody on Grubhub or DoorDash, you could actually see the percentage that's actually going to the delivery worker.
One of the apps, Grubhub, says it's the right thing to do. The bills are common sense steps to support the delivery workers. Phil Zoe, NTD News, New York.
And there was no sign that China's Evergrande paid the interest due Thursday for its offshore bonds. The deadline came and went with complete silence from the firm. Evergrande now enters a 30-day grace period. It'll default if that passes without paying. Earlier, it did agree to pay interest on a domestic bond, which was also due Thursday, but another interest payment is due next week of around $47 million. Evergrande shares dipped as much as 12% Friday. Chinese authorities are worried an ugly collapse at Evergrande could crush the property market. It accounts for 40% of Chinese household wealth. And the driver shortage is taking its toll on Britain. In London, cars are lining up to get fuel. Now retailers are giving the government a warning to save Christmas. NTD's Evelyn Lee reports.
Cars are lining up at fuel stations in London, and BP had to close some of its UK locations because of a lack of unleaded and diesel grades. The company says it's because of driver shortages. The driver shortage and spike in European natural gas prices has Britain grappling with soaring energy prices and a potential food supply crunch. And its retail industry is now warning the government about serious disruptions in the run-up to Christmas. That's unless it can reduce the acute shortage of truckers in the next 10 days. That's when retailers ramp up supply in preparation for the holiday season. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps said he will double the tests available to become a truck driver now after they were halted because of COVID. He says the government would look at all options for a fix, including easing visa rules so international drivers could temporarily fill the gap. British ministers are due to meet later on Friday in an attempt to hash out a fix. Evelyn Lee, NTD News.
Still to come this evening. Apple's new iPhone 13 goes on sale. We have details about the redesign and what's better about the new line.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. Thanks to your support, you've helped make MyPillow become one of the fastest growing companies in America. Over the last 12 years, you've helped MyPillow create thousands of jobs right here in the USA.
When I got MyPillow, I'm asleep almost immediately. I stay asleep at night and I wake up more well-rested in the morning.
That's why I invented MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs and helps keep your neck supported and aligned. I'm interrupting this commercial right now. Retailers have canceled MyPillow, and to thank you for your support, I'm going to pass the savings directly on to you. For example, you get my 6-piece towel sets, regular $109.99, now only $44.98, or MyPillow dog beds for as low as $19.99 with your promo code.
For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com.
Is deep-sea fish oil really healthy?
Due to pollution in the oceans, most fish contain heavy metal elements and radioactive substances. That's why it's so important to choose a pure source of omega-3.
Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3 is made from purslane and perilla seeds, which are rich in nutrients and minerals,
especially vitamins A, D, E, calcium, and iron. With natural processing and no harmful chemical additives, it has more than 90% concentration of omegas 3, 6, 7, and 9.
It effectively improves brain power and is beneficial to the heart's health.
Puritan Omega-3 does not smell of fish and contains no pollutants, so both adults and children can safely and easily consume it over a long period of time. Puritan Green Vegetable Omega-3. Eat 2 a day and you'll feel brand new!
Welcome back. The world's longest-running investment conference returns to Louisiana this year. The New Orleans Investment Conference is on from October 19th to 22nd, and despite the pandemic, tickets are moving fast, according to the organizer. In the past, the events hosted speakers like Milton Friedman, Steve Forbes, even Margaret Thatcher. This year, among many others, it's Ron Paul, Peter Bookford, Jim Grant, even Peter Schiff. Top investors from across the country will come together to discuss the stock market making all-time highs and red-hot real estate market, but also the potential risks facing investors as central banks weigh tightening monetary policy. So joining us is the organizer of the New Orleans Investment Conference, Brian London. Brian, pleasure to see you again.
Paul, great to be with you again.
Likewise. Brian, really long-running conference. You know, it's not a new conference, but do you feel, is there anything particularly significant about this year's event?
Yeah, you know, it is a long-running conference. It's actually the longest running retail investment conference in the world, and we're kind of known for bringing in big name speakers, the big thought leaders, the greatest thought leaders of the day. And we're doing it again, of course, this year. But I think the timing this year is particularly important. The Fed is once again trying to somewhat normalize its monetary policy, at least start advancing along that path. After many years of zero-bound monetary policy, zero-bound interest rates, quantitative easing, et cetera. We, of course, know that the last time they tried to normalize monetary policy, they were not able to do so. And it wasn't COVID that did that. It wasn't the pandemic. They had to reverse their attempts to raise rates and refrain from quantitative easing before COVID ever hit. So now they're trying again, and I think it's this transition from ultra easy monetary policy to an attempt to tightening is going to create a lot of turmoil in the markets, every asset class, and very soon too. So I think our conference is coming really at a perfect time to guide investors through the rough patch and the rough waters just ahead.
It's really a terrific lineup you guys have put together. How did you go about choosing your speakers?
Really, I just went down my wish list, my dream team of experts, and I got just about every one of them. We're fortunate in that our reputation after nearly 50 years in the business precedes us, so we're able to get a lot of really big name speakers who want to come to New Orleans and want to present their best ideas, and sometimes they actually save their best ideas and recommendations for our conference. So yeah, it's an amazing list. We've got Ron Paul, Jim Grant, John Najarian, Jim Rickards, Danielle DiMartino Booth, Jim Urio, Doug Casey, Rick Rule, Peter Schiff, Grant Williams. It just goes on and on and on. And I encourage anybody to go to our website and look at this list. It really is amazing. We're very fortunate to have all of them presenting here in New Orleans. So just very excited, and it's just a few weeks away.
You have two options. You can either make it down to lovely Louisiana, or you can attend virtually. With everything that's happening, are you expecting a small turnout in person? Are you expecting more virtual?
Well, actually, our in-person turnout or registration so far is dwarfing the virtual, so I'm very excited about that. You know, there's nothing like being there. You get to rub elbows with a lot of really smart investors. You know, they kind of self-identify as being very sophisticated and intelligent, information hungry, and really maverick. They kind of chart their own course through the market. So by the very fact that they're attending our conference, they set themselves apart from the herd, as it were. So just being in the company of this type of a group of elite investors and thinkers is very beneficial, because everyone's willing to share their views in the markets and their ideas. The presence in person is invaluable, and the fact that we already have hundreds of people registered to attend, despite everything that's going on in the world today, it really is testimony to the fact that it's widely known that you really need to be here in New Orleans. It's such a special experience.
Really exciting. Brian, best of luck with your organizing between now and then. We'll catch up soon. Thanks.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity.
And the iPhone 13 goes on sale today as pre-orders begin shipping. Apple's new line of iPhones are not a big redesign of the iPhone 12, but they do have better cameras, batteries, and processing, but for all about the same price. There are 4 versions of the new phone: the 13 mini, the 13, the 13 Pro, and the 13 Pro Max. Apple unveiled the phones at an event last week. While many businesses struggled during the pandemic, physical bookstores seem to be making a surprise comeback. NTD's Phil Zhou takes us to some famous bookstores in New York City. Find out how they're doing.
Books, books, and more books. Physical book sales are up across the U.S., including manga, which are Japanese comics and graphic novels. Let's go check some out. First stop, Kinokuniya. It's a popular Japanese book chain that's been in the U.S. since the 1960s. Now it has 15 stores in the States. We visit its flagship store in New York. Manager Kotaro Takano says sales of Japanese comics have doubled since the pandemic.
Growing even better than before COVID, especially we are selling so many mangas, anime.
Besides literature, it also sells unique gifts, stationery, and toys. Takano is hopeful sales will keep growing, especially when anime conventions return.
Yeah, we are really glad people coming back to the store right now.
And it doesn't hurt that it's located across the street from the serene Bryant Park.
I'm not a huge fan of manga books, but my daughter was, so we would come here a lot.
Next stop, we head to one of New York's most famous bookstores, the legendary Strand. It's almost 100 years old. NTD News was invited to its rare book room, which is now closed to the public. It has antique and rare books dating back centuries. While U.S. book sales are up 12% nationwide, Strand bookstore owner Nancy Wyden says this doesn't apply to all bookstores.
We were hurt by and continue to be hurt by the lack of foot traffic. Still, a lot of New Yorkers have moved out of New York and have not come back, and the offices are not back, and the tourism's not here.
The Strand is still fighting to stay afloat, getting by on just 50% of sales compared to before the pandemic.
Right, we're still here, yes, and making me, want to continue for another 100 years. We'll just see what that looks like.
And she's staying positive for the future.
With any kind of change, there's a lot of good things. But I am looking forward to Christmas, so I always look forward to Christmas.
I couldn't resist, had to get a book myself. The Strand bookstore is planning to open its rare book room on its top floor, hopefully by this Christmas. Phil Zhou, NTD News, New York.
And divers have discovered treasure off the coast of Spain. A university there announced this week that dozens of Roman coins were discovered near a small Spanish island. Two amateur free divers first discovered 8 coins back in August, with archaeologists later finding 45 more. The find is one of the largest connections of Roman coins in Europe. Scientists date the coins back between the 4th and 5th centuries and say they're perfectly preserved. They believe a wealthy landowner likely hid them from invaders and never came back for them. They say the coins sat underwater for about 1,500 years. That's the latest business updates for today. You can still catch NTD Evening News with Stephanie Cox. That's at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. For NTD Business, it's all for today. Thank you for watching. We'll see you Monday.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Don't forget to catch all of our programs on TV. NTD Evening News is on every weekday at 6:30 p.m. Find your local NTD channel at ntd.com/TV.